Okay, everyone, let's bring this meeting of the Joint Transportation Commission Committee meeting to order. Sorry, I'm thinking about the commission meeting tomorrow. Anyhow, welcome everyone. Today we're going to have I think, a fairly packed day discussing YDOT funding and some bills that our working group has brought forward. So with that, I'll ask everybody to make sure they have their cell phone silenced so it doesn't bother anyone. Uh, I do also want to thank a couple of commissioners who are with us. Brant Lyman, who's our new chair of the commission, and our former chair, Susan Holmes. Thank you. I don't think I see any other commissioners out there. Anyhow, welcome. Glad to have you here. So, I think any business or anything, comments from the co-chair?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just for a brief second here, just for everybody else's edification, I am going to try to not be rude, but I want to make it very clear that I will be up and out of my seat on a pretty regular basis today. I have a pretty bad back, and sitting has become quite the tenuous activity. So please do not take offense if you just see me stand up in the middle of your testimony or questions or something along those lines. I just wanted to make, and I suspected nothing less. But I just wanted to make that very clear, and I do apologize, but wanted to make sure everybody was aware. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And with that, Director, please come forward and begin your. Oh, yeah, we need a roll call. Sorry, thank you. Glad I have a good co-chair by me. Eve, could we please have a roll call?
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Brennan.
Here.
Senator Cooper. Senator Kolb. Representative Banks.
Here.
Representative Geringer. Representative Larson. Representative McCann.
Excused.
Representative Nicholas. Representative Posey. Representative Tarver.
Here.
Representative Wiley. Co-Chairman Brown.
Here.
Chairman Pappas.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, now, Chairman or Director, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, it's good to see you all. Thanks for making the trip to Casper. With me today at the hot seat here, I got Dennis Byrne, our CFO, and Rodney Fryer, our budget manager. Behind me, we thank you for the introduction of our commission chairman, Brant Lyman, and Susan Holmes, commissioner, and as you said, immediately past chairman, and always good to have them here. I don't know that they required a speaking role, Mr. Chairman, but if there's any questions, they'd be happy to, well, I shouldn't say be happy. They might come forward and answer a question. But they're here for support and also really just to put a face to the commission. I know that a lot of times there's a lot going on with the commission, and sometimes it can become a very not human-like organization, and so it's nice to be able to put face to a name when you see them on a list. Also with us, we have a whole bunch of people from YDOT here to support any of the questions that have come up prior to this meeting, but also be prepared for some of the questions that you might have as well. Really appreciate the committee and the chairs for all your work over the summer and also the grace and latitude you've given us over the last couple of years to ensure that we have the opportunity to speak in front of this committee to try to educate not only this committee, but it's afforded us the opportunity to get that branch out into other committees and try to continue that education as we go. It's really been an interesting and fun interim in the education process. And so we really appreciate what you guys set us up for success throughout the interim process. Also, just again, I know House Bill 33 passed this last session of the vehicle sales and use tax. Thank you for that effort as well. Just a reminder that tax started being collected July 1. It'll collect for a year, and then we'll get the distribution probably about this time next year, maybe a month later. But the team is already working on getting that programmed into the STIP, the 27 STIP fiscal year, our fiscal year 27 STIP. So those projects are already being programmed and working on getting design finished up on those. So also would like to thank the committee and the working group that came out at the last meeting, all the efforts that you all had and our team together were able to have some really good conversation, and thanks to the LSO staff for all the research and memo writing and really just all the information that they helped gather for you and for us to have a good, solid conversation over the last couple months. We really look forward to the discussion this afternoon when the working group kind of takes over from there. So what we're here to discuss this morning is a WYDOT funding overview. In your packet, we distributed the budget presentation again. I think that's, as I've been here a little over 2.5 years, that's probably the one document that I go back to on an almost daily basis. If there's a question on pretty much anything WYDOT funding related or programmatic related, it's a really, really handy tool. So I strongly suggest that you have the ability to refer back to that as well. So back in May, we discussed WYDOT 101 is what I like to call it, where we just really go through high level education of what we do. I know at that point too, we talked a little bit about the budget presentation, but I think I did it. And so I brought my A team this time. So hopefully the education's a little bit better than the high level that I did back then. But really what we always try to do in all of our education is hammer home the mission. Our mission is to provide a safe and effective transportation system. That's it, plain and simple. And so we really try to make sure, at least within our team, I talk about our mission as sideboards for us. It's safe and effective. What are you doing? Is it providing something safe? Is it providing something that's effective? And everything in between, we're going to be successful with our mission. And so internally, we pound the mission hard to ensure that they understand it. And so when we try to educate others outside the organization, we do the same. In that meeting, we talked a lot about the width and the breadth of the agency. You know, it's not, WYDOT is not since what, 91, 92, WYDOT is not just roads and bridges. We've got bolted on some other industries that came to WYDOT and that came with the name of Department of Transportation, not just the Highway Department. And so you got aeronautics, public safety, communication, motor vehicle and driver services. Highway Patrol was always in the agency from the beginning. So, but so the width and the breadth of the agency is pretty impressive. You know, I think in May I talked about our employment struggles. We're gaining on that. When I started 2.5 years ago, we were 346 vacancies. We cut that by a little over 100 now. So we're down in the 230, 240 range, depending on the hour. But really, I think it is a testament to what we're trying to build within the agency in our organization on what we do matters and making sure that every individual within our agency, whether they're the custodial staff or a bridge engineer and everything in between, how do we ensure that if that individual doesn't do their job, something's going to fail within our organization? And building that ownership and what we do, why we do it, why it's so important is really key to what we're trying to accomplish. And I think it's starting to trickle into some better retention. And then kind of, I love to call it fear of missing out. You're missing out of working for WYDOT. And so if we can continue to build that excitement about what we're doing, hopefully that helps with some of the recruitment efforts as well. Again, in May, we talked about funding, which sparked the working group, and we'll hear from them this later this afternoon. So setting the stage, and I know I've talked about this before, but it's bears to be repeated a little bit. But 15 years ago, WYDOT utilized the internal crystal ball see what the funding looks like, what inflation and buying power is looking like, and really work towards how do we survive. And what they did back then was they went into what they call preservation only mode, where they just looked to preserve the existing surfaces. They really had a hard time when it came to prioritization of any new capacity, any growth within our system. If we're worried about being able to preserve what we have, why would we grow our system? Which, you know, I think really it was a great decision. I can't fault them. It was a really good, sound business decision, but I've been working into how long did you think it was going to last? You know, did we plan an exit strategy? Did we work towards what does it look like coming out of preservation only? So very similar to the governor and to you guys as the legislature, you have more needs than you have funding. And so you have to prioritize. You have to figure out, you know, what your prioritization is, whether it's preservation versus capacity, and or what other programs need the funding and when you're going to fund it. And so I think there's some handouts. You guys have handouts like this that came in. Okay. All right. Sorry, I preempted my team. Well, I'll continue on a little bit while those get distributed, but in the handout, and I'll just show you real quick so you can see it when it comes through. This map shows a population. It's a density population. There's red dots where there's population, but the heavy blue lines that you see coming through, that's within 20 miles of the interstate. And what this map shows is 70% of Wyoming's population lives within 20 miles of the interstate. And so from a prioritization standpoint, from an affected industry perspective, it would be real simple for WYDOT to say, we got to put it all on the interstates. It's going to affect the most Wyoming citizens. However, we also know that's not reality, right? So the team has worked really hard to, and I've used the term with you guys several times, is spread that peanut butter really thin. Well, as funding has remained relatively flat on the state side, it's gone up a little bit on the Fed side. We've been able to try to spread that peanut butter as thin as possible. However, with buying power, it's diminished the amount of roads that we can maintain. So the next page on that is the system pavement conditions. Looks like this if you're on it. It's just a graph. You know, I think our pavement system, this shows the effort that the team has been really focused on within the prioritization of our preservation, that shows that our good condition is, you know, it's heading in a decent direction. You know, it's gone up, the good has gone up, the fair has slightly stayed the same, and the poor has gone down. So that's the effort that the team has put into. Where the discussion has gone internally is at what cost? You know, what has taken the back seat in the prioritization? Facilities has definitely taken a hit. Equipment has taken a hit. You know, so, and several other programs throughout the agency. The next one, which this may not be a complete, this is a big map of the state with red and blue lines on it. This shouldn't be relatively new to you, but what is new, what the team worked on for me was to put the average daily traffic numbers on those roads. And so from a prioritization standpoint, as we go forward with our funding levels, we need to really make a good concerted effort to see how many people are being impacted by a decision that we're making. And so we'll be utilizing this, this map pretty heavily into future steps to make sure that, that we're making the best decisions possible. Oops, sorry. And the next page is the customer satisfaction results. This is a survey that YDOT does in conjunction with the University of Wyoming. Every other year, we do a customer satisfaction survey. Every other year, opposite of that, we do an internal employee satisfaction survey so we can gauge how well we're doing on both levels, the surface, what we're providing, as well as how we're taking care of our people. In this, the customer sat, we're seeing dissatisfied numbers go up, satisfied numbers going down. That's not what we want. That's not what hopefully you guys want as well. But it's kind of a testament to, if these numbers were opposite, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. If the customers are happy, why am I asking for more funding? And so, so thanks for handing those out, Debbie.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
would it be
Rick.
appropriate to ask a question about this subject matter right now?
Sure, thank you.
Director Westby, on the customer service satisfaction survey, do you know the style of questions that are asked? Are they about the condition of the roads? Are they about the capacity of the roads? Are they about snow removal? What kinds of questions go into this?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thank you for the question. Yes, to all those. It's a pretty lengthy survey, and what the university did was they'll random send out 1,000 letters saying, hey, we would like to interview you on your satisfaction. And if you get a random number from a 307-777 number, or 772 number or whatever it is, don't hang up. We're talking about the survey, and you can either do it online or you can do it over the phone with them and they'll plug in your answers. But the questions, I guess, to answer your question is, yes, it talks about road quality, road ride, programmatically, highway patrols in there as well. Our customer service at some of our other programs that we have. So it's a very broad, how is YDOT as an agency doing? And I'd be more than happy to provide the link to the survey questions and the data that came out of it.
Mr. Chairman, follow up?
Oh, yes.
Just real briefly, do you see any particular areas going down? And I'd love to see more of a breakdown of what this looks like, but do you happen to see any areas that are more declining than others?
Mr. Chairman, if I recall, it's road surface, road ride. It's quality of our travel is the ones that stand out to me. And I believe that's what this is.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Director Westby. As we go through this conversation today, I'd like to come back to your first statement on your guiding principles of being safe and effective. Can you just help me understand, because it seems at times that there will be a little conflict, which is the priority, safe or effective? Because sometimes when you get a preservation mode and something, you may sacrifice shoulder width, which is safety, for effective. And so how do you manage that? What's your guiding principles for determining which is the priority, safe or effective?
Mr. Chairman and Representative, up until, well, still, when we're in preservation mode, we are not really growing our system. So capacity growth is not even in the conversation at this point. So safe and effective is in preservation mode is just that. How do we improve the road surface? How do we ensure that we're getting guardrails where it needs to be, delineation? There might be a few grade, off the borrow ditch, try to improve some of those grades, but realistically we're not growing the system at this point. We're not improving on the safety perspective. All of our roads are safe, but how do we make them safer? is where we're trying to get our program into when we're thinking through the prioritization is passing lanes is one, and I got, we do a long-range transportation plan. I can't remember, every 10 years. Yeah, 5 years, I believe. One of the top five are maintain pavement is the number one. Number two is passing lanes. Number three is replace bridges, and number four is safety projects, which, you know, we have shoulders is on there too. So going into the next long-range plan with some prioritization, we will now start to make those hard decisions that we may not be maintaining some of the lower ADT roads, but we will be putting a higher ranking on prioritization on some other things that we're being asked to put forward, whether it's safety or better ride quality or improving bridges.
Okay, Senator Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, good morning, Director.
Morning.
I guess a few questions about the survey, because I believe what you're saying is a really good way to handle, to get information from the public. How do we do that, though? Certainly, if they're relying on telephone conversation, 99.9% of my calls are spam calls, okay? So that's really going to be valueless in getting people to answer the phone. Look forward to seeing your actual questions you're asking people, and then how you came up with said list. You know, who's driving this list? And then if you could also elaborate on the cost of said survey, or what it cost to YDOT, what it cost us for you to do this survey. I don't know what that number is, but I guess just reiterate, I think it's a great way of handling, gathering information for the public, because that's who we serve. So that's really the positive point about this. But how do we get there with numbers? As I want you to have good numbers, because I can't rely on the numbers you have, frankly. If it goes up or down, I don't know what that means when nobody's answering their phones, Director. I can just tell you, I don't care what, they'll spam anybody with any number, and nobody is trusting a cell phone anymore to answer it. That's my problem with the cell phone. But I want to find out how you're going to do it. Like, what's your best thoughts of moving forward to improve the system, not to do the same old thing, but a way of making it better, so I can get more information that I can then say, to my constituents, you know, why it's a good thing or why it's a bad thing. So thank you for doing that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on how do we do it better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, on the survey, luckily our great university does have a group that does this, and they're scientific in how they go about doing it. Like I said before, they send out a letter saying, if you're interested, you know, make sure that you answer this phone call to eliminate that spam thing. And I probably will get 5 today while we're sitting here, those spam calls. So I get what you're saying. I know over the course of time, it's evolved. The survey's evolved to try to capture more people answering the survey. And it is a statistically valid survey, which is what we all strive to get to, but more than happy to send that survey, and you can dive into it and we can have a deeper conversation on it. But we're always trying to evolve that to make sure that we get more people into the survey, because like you, I'm not going to just spend money to do a survey to check the box. I want the numbers. I want to study it. I want to make sure that we make good decisions based out of the survey. And we can come to you and support why we're making some of these decisions because of the survey. And on the cost, 60,000 is the cost on that survey. Thanks, Dennis. All right, where am I?
Okay, Director, please continue.
Thanks. Once I find my place again. Regardless of stateside funding, you know, we'll continue to make the hard decisions to place the funds where it's most appropriate, make those prioritization conversations where they need to be, whether it's equipment, facilities, roads, bridges, other programs, aeronautics, highway patrol, motor vehicle services. But it will come, those prioritization conversations will come at the cost of preservation or capacity. So I'd like to turn to federal funds, what we can spend federal funds on. I know we've talked about it before, but I think it bears being repeated. Federal funds are for projects. They're for construction projects, they're for preservation projects, they're preservation contracted maintenance projects. We do get some discretionary grants for law enforcement, but other than that, really can't be used for law enforcement. Obviously, if it's for a project, the planning and the engineering can go into those costs. And labor, with that planning and engineering, labor can only be charged to a federal project if it's for the project. So what we are estimating or averaging over the years is about 25% of our labor force is augmented with federal dollars because they're specifically working on a federal project. We cannot spend Fed funds on maintenance, so patching, pothole patching, some of the small minor repairs, snow removal, mowing operations, facilities and equipment, our general administration, office work, accounting, PR, public relations, HR, IT, can't be used. Law enforcement, like I said, and public safety communication. So,
Representative Larson, please.
Thank you. I want to make sure that I got this number right. Director Westby, you said, so is it 25% of our current labor burden can be augmented with federal funds? Am I saying that right?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, you're correct. We can build to a project, and so out of our total, 25% is billed back to a project.
And so then, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and then you talked about you can't do maintenance, and so if you could clarify just a little bit, I think we understand that the patching and stuff, but would that include snow removal? Or
Mr. Chairman and Representative, snow removal, snow plow operations is definitely a stateside funded operation.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for just where we can get ahead. So then when we look at employee compensation, then from a state side, and I think it would be easy to assume with all the federal funds coming in that would pay our YDOT, help augment and pay our YDOT employees, but in reality, it doesn't. Most of that has to be paid for and factored in on our state compensation side. Am I saying that correct?
We do a compensation. Darren, hold on just a second. Swap the mics.
Is your mic working?
Your batteries just went dead. They look like they're working, but they're not. Kind of like us.
Like this?
All right, is that better? Thank you. I obviously talked too much already this morning, and I apologize for the crew here for that. But when a compensation increase happens, we obviously are going to accept that compensation increase. It does not come with funds from the legislature, so we prioritize those funds to go towards those compensation increases. And I would assume those compensation increases, 25% of them can be paid by the feds. The other 75% are being absorbed internally with the existing budget that we have. We utilize every time we have a meeting and somebody asks for something, I'd say it's jokingly, but it's real. It's coming off the roads. I mean, if we make a decision to fund that compensation increase, it is coming off of something on a prioritization, whether it's road surfacing, maintenance, snow plow operations. So it definitely is it's a burden that we love to have. And I would jump on any bus when it comes to compensation, and knowing exactly that it has an impact to our prioritization, but it is a priority. Our people are a priority. And from a retention and recruitment standpoint, I can cheerlead all we want, but at the end of the day, if I can't compensate them, my cheerleading may not be as strong.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, Director, did I hear you say that all the snow plowing is state funded? Even on the interstates, it's state funded?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, that's correct. Yeah, the only thing that we can use Fed dollars on is construction projects.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I was on federal funding. The crystal ball, we're going into reauthorization with the federal transportation bill. I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible to say that we will hopefully maintain the federal levels of dollars that we've been getting over the last transportation bill. I have to be optimistic on that. Over this last transportation bill, the state of Wyoming was fortunate enough to get 70 to $100 million more federal dollars per year. The last couple of years, it's been 70. The first couple of years were 100. So our hope is that we can fight like heck out in DC with our federal delegation, with our national organizations to at least maintain where we're at. If you recall, where the funds come from on the federal level with the funding is on the fuel tax. And as we all can attest, we know that the fuel consumption's going down, therefore the gas tax is going down. So what's going into the National Highway Trust Fund is decreasing. And so they're augmenting the delta or the difference between what's going out to the states in the federal formula dollars versus what's coming in on a revenue side of the house. They're augmenting that with general funds, and doesn't take much of a crystal ball, but we all know that we can't continue down the path. So I know the feds, or at least the federal side of the house, the national organizations are working hard on other revenue potential ideas. Now, do I think that's going to happen within the next year? I do not. And so that's some of my fear and trepidation on if we can maintain, that's a win. If it goes down, that's probably more likely, but I don't like to even say that out loud because that's putting it out in the world. But we're working really hard, and we're positioned nicely with our current delegation right now that they're positioned in the right committees to help us be successful on a rural state transportation bill condition. And so we're fortunate in that regard, and we're going to push hard to try to keep that. And so so before I turn it over to Dennis and Rodney, I just situational awareness on a few items that we're working on with other committees. You know, outside of our other desired capacity improvement projects, the big project that's lurking out there is the I-80, I-25 interchange. It's currently under design. We got a federal discretionary grant to perform that design of that interchange. It's currently sitting at about 500 million. Well, as you can imagine, if we were to put that into the STIP, prioritization model would probably decrease to where there's nothing happening in the rest of the state for a couple of years, which we know that can't happen. So we're working with how do we get a federal grant to help augment at least half of that, but that still leaves 50% that we're going to have to match. And where does that come from? So even if we take 250 million out of our STIP over the next, 2 or 3 years, that's going to leave an indelible mark to the rest of the state. So we're working on different things, whether it's, to line up the match, whether it's one-time funds, bonding. We're working on some other ideas that some of the other states are doing.
Director, Representative Landon has a
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So,
Brown.
Darren, just out of curiosity, so I started back in 2017. Director Panos was telling us, hey, this is on the horizon. We need to be looking out for this. And the cost at that time was right at 200 million. So in 10 years, we've seen that more than double in price. And I know that it actually has to be coming. Eventually, we are going to have to do it. What's the reality of your timeline of expectation? Assuming the money flows, what are you guys looking at? What is your guys' integration into actually putting this into practice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman. We're hoping to have the design to a level that we can start putting hard numbers to and start planning out when we're going to bid it. Probably a year and a half out before we can do that. Possibly 2, depending on some consultants that we're needing specialized in. But so we're 2 years. And my concern, and some of the 500 million right now has some inflation built into it, just knowing that it's taking time. Do we rip the Band-Aid off and do one project and try to get it done in 4 years, 4.5 years, 5 years? Or do we phase it out and it makes 14, 15 years of construction? Well, to your point, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that 500 million in 15 years could be a heck of a lot more. And so that's why I'm pretty bullish on this project, knowing that just 8 years ago, it was half. And seeing what inflation's doing, we need to get moving on it if we're thinking about doing it within a $1 billion year, a $1 billion construction project in 10 years.
Representative Larson.
Thank you. Along that line of thinking, so why has it taken 8 years to get this designed?
Mr. Chairman, and Representative, it's a $13 million design. And so we've been trying to hustle a grant to do that and finally got the grant a couple years ago. And so they're working right now because of that grant. Very similar to all the other discretionary grants we go after. We do not have a shelf. We've found that over the course of time, we've depleted our shelf projects or significant capacity growth shelves. Why? Because we've been on preservation only mode. Why would we go design something if we knew we weren't going to build it? And so that's some of the mindset that we're trying to shift into a little bit. I want shelf projects. I want projects out on the shelf that's designed, ready to go, that I can pitch to the commission and to you all if they approve for funding for some of these projects that I think we all know in our districts that we want. But I just don't have the funding to slide it into the STIP and know that I'm going to starve something else. So from a design perspective, it's no different. So we have to think differently. I talk about the exit strategy. Well, if we're going to continue to think that we have for the last 15 years and expect a different result, we're going to be here in 15 years having a conversation about preservation only mode and no capacity growth, no expansion on our safety, no capacity increases on our congestion, things that we know we need to do.
Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but I also believe in either 2018, maybe even 2019, I actually worked with, I can't remember if it was you directly or maybe Taylor at the time, but we actually ran a budget amendment to try to get some money put into there as well to try to get this kick started. And at the time, I mean, we were facing $350 million shortfall across the board, and we had just taken you guys off a general fund in 17. So, but I believe you guys asked at that time for 8 million to do a 1-to-1 match. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, Dennis Byrne, Chief Financial Officer with WYDOT, and that is my recollection, but it's been a minute and I've slept since then, so we'll have to verify, but that is my recollection, Mr. Chair.
Senator Cole.
Yeah, it's a message. Just a question about the road condition. I started looking at your handed out documents. And could you distinguish the poor to fair road condition color? Because I think one's red and one's an orange. I can't, I mean, under these lights, it's probably a poor color choice to use what we have here. So could you tell me, and maybe in the future, we have a different color besides maybe things that look like two reds for fair and poor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Fair is orange.
I believe fair is the middle line.
the fair is the top line.
Ah,
Colorblind, Mr. Co-Chair.
The middle line,
This
the
board.
red line.
Okay, okay. Well, just,
I appreciate the feedback.
it's just, yeah, I know it probably looked great on the monitor, but
Yeah.
it's hard to see up here under these lights, but thank you
Right.
for the clarification.
Roger that. Mr. Chairman, I'll keep prodding along and Dennis just prompted me. I'm Darren Westby. I'm the director of YDOT. Sorry, for the record. Um, Normally I don't wait 30 minutes into my presentation to do that, but thanks for not calling me out. So that's the I-80, I-25. The other one that we're working with the governor and the appropriations committee, as well as minerals and economic committee over the interim session, is the air service and capacity purchase agreement funding. We saw a record 1.6 million passengers in 2024. Employments outperformed the national averages. Are obviously, just like every other industry, our costs are increasing in that industry as well. This capacity purchase agreement funding ensured none of our communities lost air service over the last 15 years. Unlike 16 other communities across the country, the capacity purchase agreement intent was to build each market in to be able to exit the program. That was kind of the intent and the design of the capacity purchase agreement. And so Gillette will be coming off and transitioning off in 2025, I believe, or 2026. And I would say that, and you guys can probably attest that if it wasn't for COVID, we'd probably have a few more agreements being replenished. So funding what you all put in for the capacity purchase agreement will be exhausted in 2026. And so there will be a request coming forward to replenish that capacity purchase agreement for the next biennium.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Director Westby, for bringing that up. I think that that's worked really well, and would just like a reminder. It seems like if you can just give, it seems like when we got that put together, there was around 16 million that we put into that. Then we put some COVID hit and we had that wonky couple of years there. So we put, I think, 8 million of ARPA in. But if you would just clarify that, and then can you give us an idea? I think the biggest impact that I'm hearing is coming on the cost of fuel. That's driving maybe the cost of this up, but this is really critical for these remaining airports, Sheridan, Rock Springs, Riverton, to have air service. But could you just confirm those numbers if you have them?
Mr. Chairman, specific to the funding, the original CPA was funded with $15 million from LISRA. And then you are correct, we did receive $8 million in ARPA funding that has supplemented that. As far as the costs, I mean, fuel is always a major component of those costs. Pilots certainly have increased as well. Fuel is a huge portion of those costs. I do think, Mr. Chairman, that overall the program has performed exceptionally well. Gillette in particular is coming off as a result of the efforts that were made up there. So you're correct, Representative Larson, there is a need and it is significant.
Go ahead.
So can you share with us what your ask is going to be, or do you have that not finalized yet? What are we looking at?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I was talking to Rodney. What was the question?
I was just asking if you had your number that you're going to request. Have you got that refined yet? Could you share that with us, or are you still developing that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe the number's it's nearly 19 million. I think it's about 18.8 or 18.6. Mr. Chairman, just one clarification. I think that the CARES funding was a total of $4 million. I turned that into a biennium number. It was a one-time $4 million.
And Mr. Chairman, just the last thing that we're working with the governor and the appropriation committee on is the transportation information system funding. We're going into phase 2 of the transportation information system. And so there's going to be a request to continue implementation of that programming and the system.
Okay.
And with that,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think,
I think are we ready for the budget presentation?
yes.
Okay, committee, that, for those of you who are, using the PDF, it's on page, I believe 47, of your PDF. Yeah, Representative Larson.
Director Espy, before you escape completely, let's come back to the Transportation Information System. That replaced RIS.
Mr. Chairman, that is what internally we call it RIS-TIS until we can get completely off the RIS and we'll be on the TIS, yes.
Okay, so would you mind just taking 30 seconds and bring us a little closer to where we're at in that overall? And when you talk about phase two, did we only fund one phase of that to begin with? I thought,
Mr. Chairman, I can talk about the funding, and I think Taylor's probably coming up to talk about the phasing. Originally, we had requested $20 million, I believe, of general funds for phase one. At the time, total project costs we anticipated were 80 million. Since then, we think we can do it for less than that, but we did not receive the 20 million in general funds from you folks. We were put on the clock, said to use, instructed by you folks to use our own highway funds. So it's been paid for with highway funds, mostly to this point. And so we are asking for general funds now for the remaining phases. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Rossetti so he can explain the phases.
Good morning,
Mr. Chairman, Taylor Rossetti, Deputy Director at YDOT. Yeah, we were about ready to wrap up the first phase, which was the driver's licensing portion of the project. Tentative go live date on that is October of this year. And then what we'll be doing is moving into what we were talking about originally as phase two and phase three, which is really moving over to the motor vehicle side. That's where a lot of the interactions with the county folks are, with vehicle registrations and titling will occur. As you guys recall, last session, there was also the bill on e-titling. So that will actually get wrapped here into that second phase of the project. In addition to that, there's some business licensing and other tasks that are done through our compliance unit at the department. So that's really what phase two and phase three are. Strategy on that right now is still being worked with ETS. On phase one, we did go out to contract with a vendor. And on phase two, we haven't made the decision yet as to whether or not that's going to go to all vendor, some vendor, or if some of that's going to be done in-house. So that's part of what we're looking at for phase two and phase three.
thank you.
Thank you. Representative Nicholas.
Could you just follow up on that? Because you said it's going to be less than 80 million for 2 and 3. And so are you going to ask for the 20 that we didn't give you, or are you going to, what's your plan for funding the remaining 60 million? Or whatever that number is.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas. Yes, our original budget, if you recall, that was worked over many, many years. The strategy on that at the time actually was all contractor, basically based on what was going on in the market. That 80 million also did include some money for the counties for some of their additional adjustments in order to come onto the system, as well as some internal staffing support during the project phase. So that 80 million was all in. Right now, what we're looking at in phase two, what we believe we can get done for, it's about 20 million, as Mr. Byrne mentioned, is we believe we can get everything off of the ETS mainframe. We believe that we can get the registration components of the system built, get the e-titling completed. That's really what we're looking at for that 20 million. Total price tag at this point in time, Representative Nicholas, we can say that it'll be under 80 million, but I can't give you anything a little bit more definitive than that until we start looking at that phase three.
So just to follow up, what's the timing on when we have that number? Or a close proximity to it?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, we are actively working to get off the mainframe right now. Currently, YDOT is about the only agency on there, so we're basically supporting the entire enterprise at this point. So that work is ongoing right now. We anticipate being off the mainframe by the end of this calendar year. So that would be all of the driver's licensing information that's on the mainframe as well as the motor vehicle information. That will then be housed basically kind of in a static hosted environment by us and ETS. So that is ongoing now. Our anticipation is starting next year to basically roll into that phase two. We'd really like to get that going. And as Mr. Byrne mentioned, the legislature with House Bill 254 actually did put us on the clock. So 2027 is kind of where we're still shooting for to get that project done.
Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess backup plan, you don't get the budget, you don't get this money. Are you going to have the money to pay for this deadline? Just what are the thoughts about?
Mr. Chairman, so we're committed to the project. So essentially what's going to happen is if we don't get general fund funding or some other source of funding for this project, it's, as you heard the director say earlier, that this is going to come off the roads. That's what we'll have to do. We'll have to prioritize finishing this project, and it will be, at the cost of road work.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's roll into the budget presentation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. Dennis Byrne, Chief Financial Officer with YDOT. The presentation you have in front of you was developed for fiscal year 2025. We are in the process of developing the 2026 budget presentation so that we can present that to the Transportation Commission at the September Commission meeting. So what we'll do is send you a new copy, the updated numbers, once the commission has had a chance to review and approve the budget for fiscal year 2026. The structure won't change, just there'll be some number changes from one fiscal period to the next. I will also point out that if you're watching the PDF, the slides are at the bottom, the slide numbers are at the bottom right-hand side, or you can follow along here on the screen. I'll call them out either way. My intent, Mr. Chairman, is not to go over all 80 pages here. Yeah. Really, the way that this budget is developed is there are 14 main slides, and everything beyond that is really just layers of detail beyond that. So at any time, feel free to look it over. If you have questions, you certainly can reach out to myself or anyone at the DOT, and we'll get you answers to those questions.
Sorry to interrupt, but thank you for the detailed information because it really does help.
Yeah, you bet.
Us
Absolutely.
understand.
And I will touch on a few of the detail pages just to reinforce some things. So all of you have seen some portion of this. Some of you have seen all of this. So I will try not to be remedial, but I will try to be informative and really try to educate the committee on revenues, expenditures, how the money can be expended. Some of it's going to be in reinforcement of what the director has already talked about this morning, but I'll go ahead and get started with slide number 1, Mr. Chairman. And really what this slide shows is the majority high level in the blue squares. Those are our major revenue sources. And so starting on the left, you can see that our federal revenue, and this includes federal highways, federal transit, federal aviation, motor carrier. So more than half of YDOT's total revenue is federal dollars. Again, those federal dollars are really limited on how we can spend them based on how the bills are written at the federal level. Then moving up to the highway user fees there in the top center, these are the fuel tax, registration, driver's license. That's the revenue that comes in through those things. And then we have other revenue. The other revenue is largely federal mineral royalties, severance tax. We charge for the use of the aircraft. And then anytime that we perform duties for a local entity, we call that authority to render service. Excuse me, there's revenue that comes in as a result of that. So that's what the last blue box there represents. All of that funding comes into YDOT. And then as you folks are aware, there's two bodies that really provide the authority for the expenditure of those dollars. It's the Transportation Commission and then you folks. On the commission side, the commission oversees roughly 85% of the total budget. They provide the authority for those funds. And those programs are mainly our construction, our maintenance, equipment facilities, and our overhead programs. Then in the orange on the right side of the slide there, this is where you folks come in and provide the authority for our legislative programs. Those legislative programs were already alluded to earlier by the director. Most of them came over in 1991 reorganization of state government. And you folks still provide the authority for that. And those are patrol, aeronautics. Now, again, patrol has been with us the whole time, but that is a legislative program. Driver's license, motor vehicle services, our fuel tax. There's a few other small ones there, but this is a representation of what money flows into the department and who has authority to authorize expenditure. Excuse me. Moving on to slide 2, Mr. Chairman, I really just want to point out our total revenue and buying power trends.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Dennis. Can I just make sure that if I'm looking at these numbers, I'm getting it correctly? So if I look at, if I look at the other state revenues at 178 million, and then I look at the burden of the legislative programs being at 127 million, that would consume, and that consumes 15% of your expenditures. But if we take, would it be fair to say if we take the 178, remove the 127, simple math there, that only 50 million of the general funds or the state funds generated go over to construction, maintenance, equipment? So it really is a very small percentage of state generated funds that go to our highways. Am I seeing that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, I think to a degree that's correct, but keep in mind that this represents other state revenues. The highway user fees are also state revenues that are contributing directly to construction and maintenance. So further in the document, you'll kind of see in detail where the revenues are going. So it's a little clearer later in the document about what revenues are coming in and exactly where they're going and the color of money. Moving on to slide 2, Mr. Chairman, this is, again, just our total revenue and buying power trend. I think it's important for us to just kind of review this. This is a 30-year look back, but I really want to draw your attention to 2010 and forward. And the reason I'm using 2010 is because 2010 is when WYDOT, I think, wisely went to preservation mode. We kind of saw the writing on the wall. We were not going to have enough funding overall to sustain capacity, mobility, and some larger expansion projects. So we really had to pull back, go to a preservation mode. And so we're using that as an index here. So since 2010, you can see that our total revenue, represented by the green line, that's a trend line, is actually increasing through today, which is good. However, when you compare that to our buying power from the same amount of time, you can see that our buying power is decreasing. So we are not able to do today the same amount of work that we were able to do in 2010, specifically because of inflation, which we're all familiar with. So again, just showing trends here, and I'm going to show you both on the federal and the state side, in addition to this total revenue, just so that you can kind of get a comparison as we move forward.
Well, Mr. Chairman. So what I find interesting about these numbers is that if you, for example, if you compare this to the state budget over the same period of time, you're growing by 2 times as fast in terms of total dollars expended or available than the state has, and yet we're doing the same thing essentially with half the dollars that you're doing. But that's just because construction costs are dictating everything. So it's really apples and oranges. And so that's something that it took me a while to get my head around of why it costs what it costs. And that problem since 2010 or the last 5 years is almost doing the same thing in half the time that it did prior to that in terms of increased costs of what you're paying for. Is that fair? That makes sense?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I would concur with that. We are seeing extraordinary inflationary costs on the construction side. So yeah, it is certainly impacting our ability to do road work and those types of activities. Mr. Chairman, I am moving on to slide 2.3, just if you're keeping up with us on the PDF. And what this slide represents is just the federal revenue. And what's interesting about the federal side of the house is, as you can see, again, since preservation mode began, our revenues are increasing at a little bit quicker pace on the federal side. And when you account for inflation and buying power, the feds are actually keeping up with inflation, and they're doing a pretty good job at doing so. Now, can we continue to expect them to do that? I don't know that we can. What we're hearing is that, federal dollars will probably flatten over the next few years. Now, there's nothing out officially about that, but that is what we're hearing behind the scenes. So I don't think you're going to see the same rate of increase on the federal side as we have over the past few years. Mr. Chairman, I really want to kind of compare and contrast the federal side with slide 2.5, which is the state revenue history. Just a couple of things to point out here. The highest state revenue we ever received was in 2008. But again, I'm using 2010 for the reasons that I had stated earlier. That was when we decided to go to preservation. That's really when we saw that there was going to be an issue with our total revenue in terms of being able to perform mission across the organization. So since 2010, you can see that our state revenues are increasing slightly. I would call that relatively flat. But again, if you look at our buying power, and now on the state side here, we're using just the Wyoming fourth quarter cost of living on this particular graph. So our buying power is still decreasing rapidly. We are not able to keep up with the same level of mission that we were back into 2010. And I'm not suggesting that 2010 was some, euphoria. It wasn't necessarily the best of times, but it is an indicator about what we are able to accomplish today versus what we were able to accomplish 15 years ago. A couple other points that I really want to point out here on this slide.
Dennis,
Co-Chairman Brown?
just a quick question we talk about 2010, and later today we'll talk about the fuel tax, but in 2012 you saw a pretty good impetus or a pretty good influx of money from from the fuel tax that came in. What did that do comparatively to that 2010 to 2012 or 2013, I think is probably when you guys actually started seeing that money? It had to have at least helped. And so I know you keep going back to that 2010, but when we're sitting there looking at years, to me, it's like, hey, we saw what was happening in 2010 and they adjusted for that. They gave you guys that increase. It would be helpful to look at the 2013, which is the same amount of revenue coming in, at least for me. I don't know about anybody else, but.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple things I want to touch on here, and the director may have some things to add here, but I want you to look at the graph. We started receiving the fuel tax, the additional 10 cent, I think that's what you're referring to, in 2014 there. And so a couple of things to keep in mind. Yes, we did receive approximately $45 million a year extra funding. But what you'll notice as we get further in this document, we were losing at other state revenues. We were losing general fund dollars. And so although we did receive money, which was very beneficial, and I know it took a lot of effort on behalf of the legislature to get that passed, and we're very appreciative of that, it wasn't really a one-for-one because of some of the other dollars that we had lost over time, specifically the general funds and some potential with FMRs and severance tax that we'll get into.
And to that point, after we raised the tax, and then the legislature decided to pull WYDOT off the general fund, there's a lot of organizations out there who now are wary about us raising another tax because they're fearful that we'll cut them again. And so it's the intent was to try to support our roads, highways, and construction, but then when we started clawing back general funds from the or YDOT funds from the general fund, I think it was probably not a wise choice.
So, Mr. Chairman, what's interesting about this discussion is that we spent 8 years trying to get every agency we possibly could off of the general fund because the general fund was depleting and we didn't have enough money to fund everything. And so, I mean, that was, we succeeded in, in balancing the budget, but on the backs of agencies, it's just that simple.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of more talking points on this particular slide. Again, just for comparison purposes. If you look at the top of the graph there, it states the state revenue needed to equal 2010 buying power would be 464 million. That's what we would need to be receiving today just in stateside funding to equal the buying power we had in 2010. And our current state revenues are, let's call it 315 million-ish. I mean, you can see on the graph there and do the math. So quite a ways from our buying power. And then going back to the 30-year lookup, the next bullet point there says state revenue needed to equal 1996 buying power is 414 million. So we are actually on the state side, we're not even back to our 1996 buying power. So just some points of reference.
Representative Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dennis, is that 414 an annual or biannual number? That's an annual number, I'd assume.
Mr. Chairman, yes, it's annual number.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we will move on to some of your favorite slide. I know I'm not looking at anyone in particular. This graph is just a representation. And let me start off by saying this, Mr. Chairman. It's 3, I think. We understand we're in the same position ourselves. So we understand that you folks have a limited amount of money and you have priorities that you need to fund. We understand that. We have to do that on a daily basis. So it's a matter of setting priorities, and we fully understand the limitations that you folks have because we have those limitations ourselves. Having said that, what I really want to represent here is just YDOT's ability to generate revenue over time has been impacted. And what this slide represents is the effects of de-earmarking. I'm sure you're all familiar with de-earmarking, but just very quickly, de-earmarking was when caps were established for federal mineral royalties and severance tax. Prior to that, YDOT was receiving a very set percentage of the total revenues that would have come in for federal mineral royalties and severance taxes. After that, the cap was set on FMRs at, I believe, 200 million and 155 million for severance tax. And so YDOT gets the same percent, but only up to the 200 million on FMRs and only up to the same percent, up to 155 million on severance tax. So what this graph represents, the red shows what YDOT's revenue would have been had de-earmarking not taken effect. So just to take a step back here, at the time of de-earmarking, YDOT was informed that if the legislature realized that there was going to be impacts to YDOT's budget, its future earning potential. So the thought was that if YDOT needed funding, YDOT would come to the legislature and ask for general fund dollars. That was kind of the agreement. That was kind of the understanding, which we did do, and we'll go through that here in just a little bit. So I think the legislature understood that there was going to be a need for future revenue, and if we needed it, come ask for it. Even with the general fund dollars that we have asked for and have received, the net impact of de-earmarking to YDOT is the number you see there in the yellow at the top of the document. It's approximately $1.35 billion. That's the net impact. Again, you folks have priorities. You have to fund those priorities. We understand that. Just showing you a little bit of history here from a budgetary standpoint.
Mr. Chairman. So I understand obviously the de-earmarking issue, but if you take some of the other agencies, it's a lot worse graph than this one.
Yeah.
So what goes around everywhere. So
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're just, I think we're hoping at some point it comes around. Mr. Chairman, moving on to 3.4. Again, I alluded to the general funds that YDOT has received, asked for and received, and the legislature has been, gracious in the past with regard to general fund monies. At one point, our highest general fund biennium receipt was in fiscal year 2009, 2010, and we were receiving about $235 million that biennium in general fund distributions. Most of that went to surface transportation. You can see there on that top line, about 200 million of it went to surface transportation. So it was, construction on the roads. There was money for airports in the form of airport improvement dollars and air service enhancement dollars. And then we did receive some money for WildLink and some dollars for transit. Fast forward, I think it was 2018. Representative Nicholas would know better probably. I think 2018 is when there was a strong effort to take us off the remainder of the general fund dollars. At that point, I think we had $48 million left in general funds, and there was a swap made between general funds and registration and driver's license fees. The registration dollars and driver's license fees were increased to offset the remaining general fund dollars. So it essentially took us back to a net zero with regard to that last bunch of general fund dollars. Fast forward to 23, biennium fiscal years 23 and 25, we are receiving general fund dollars again. This is specific to WildLink. We're getting about $8.6 million a biennium for the use of WildLink and for the operation of WildLink. That $8.6 billion a biennium covers the majority of the cost, but not all of the costs related to WildLink.
And that's only operation and maintenance costs. There's no build out costs for new towers or anything, correct?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, didn't we also fund one-time funding for expansion of the towers as you're spreading across the state, I believe?
Mr. Chairman, somewhere along the past, certainly you did in that line item of WildLink general fund distributions, there were one-time build out dollars.
There was, at the year in 2003, we did have $50 million, I believe, built in to a bill, but it never passed.
I believe that's true.
But we stuck some ARPA dollars in there, I thought, to
We did.
build out and expand that, like 13 million or something like that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to Representative Larson's point, I think it was 35 million that was appropriated. Mr. Chairman, moving on to slide 4, this is just a pie chart showing the revenues. Again, federal aid accounts for a little over 50% of our total revenues. Fuel tax is the second highest revenue source at about 14% or $116 million. Registrations, driver's license, vehicle fees. These vehicle fees are the overweight, oversized load fee permits. That's the revenue generated there. And then, of course, our royalties and severance tax that we continue to receive from you folks. And then the other revenue. This other revenue is generally, most of it is carryover. So we budget for total expenditure. We don't necessarily spend all of that budget, which is important really to kind of point out here, Mr. Chairman. We are not in a situation where we come down to the end of a fiscal period and managers are just buying chairs and furniture, just to make sure that those dollars are expended. We are very good about not doing that because they know if they need something, they'll ask for it and we'll budget for it in the next period. So what happens is we don't spend every penny that it's budgeted for. That money's carried over and we program it in the year after that. Now, another large portion of that carryover is vacancy savings. As you folks know, we've had some vacancies over the years. We budget for 100% of the positions. What doesn't get filled comes back into the budget for us to program in the following fiscal year. So that's the other funding that's represented here on page 4. The other thing I do want to point out is that the director had earlier, and I'll reference this again later in the document, was pretty clear about how you can and cannot use federal dollars. But I do want to point out that in this federal aid specific to federal highways, we are allowed to charge an ICAP, which is an indirect cost allocation plan. We're able to charge the feds based on a percent. And what that basically does is it converts federal dollars to state dollars. So it allows us to convert some of the federal dollars that would be restricted specifically for roads, and allows us to use it for overhead cost or recruitment cost or building costs. It really is a benefit to WYDOT. It's a critical component of our ability to fund and maintain the organization. So think of it a little bit like, the state SWICAP.
Representative Larson?
Thank you. And so Dennis, this doesn't reflect our actions last session on the sales tax, correct? And that'd be updated in the next version that you give to us. But then is it down there where you see royalties and severance taxes on that pie chart? Are those the two revenue sources that were earmarked previously that are impacted the most? And were they, if that's correct, what would you anticipate, were those de-earmarking not take place? What would you anticipate the difference in those two being percentage-wise?
Mr. Chairman, the answer to the first question is yes, the royalties and severance tax is in fact those revenues impacted by de-earmarking. And I think Rodney's going to look it up here for us. I think in 25. So specific to federal mineral royalties, we would receive probably 33.9 million additional in just federal mineral royalties, and additional 61.8 million per year in severance tax. 61.8 million. And then to your first point, Representative Larson, you will see in the fiscal year 27 budget build, the vehicles sales and use tax. You will see that in this pie chart as a separate revenue. Mr. Chairman, just for your reference, this is slide 4.2. So this is a good reference for you folks in terms of the very top bullet point talks about where federal dollars can be used. It's not a problem. And then there's just a little more description on the highway improvement program, the highlighted or the bold sentence there. Federal dollars specific to Federal Highway Administration has to be attributable to the construction of federal aid highways or highway planning, research, or development. Again, just a reference if you need to look at how those federal dollars can and cannot be spent. Moving on to slide number 5, Mr. Chairman. There's two slides here. The first is the gasoline tax. And this is what we were anticipating with regard to revenues for gasoline. For 25, that was $83 million. And then basically how the distributions work are the state parks amount come off the top, as does the LUST amount. And for you folks who are not familiar with LUST is leaking underground storage tanks. That is funding that WYDOT receives. We do receive this revenue directly, but a like amount is tracked and provided to the Department of Environmental Quality for the mitigation of leaking underground storage tanks. The dollars that the DEQ gets comes from over the cap severance tax dollars. Again, we just track it so that we know what to report to LSO so that they know what to provide to DEQ. So after you've removed LUST and the state park distributions, the remaining is distributed 15% to cities, 14% to the county road fund, 13.5% to counties, and the state highway fund receives 57.5% of those revenues.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to back up a second on the LUST money. So is it, I guess a better way of saying it, is it a pass-through between WYDOT to the
Mr. Chairman, it is not a pass-through. It's a swap. YDOT keeps the money, reports the total, and then monies from over the cap severance tax is provided directly to DEQ. So our only part in this is just recording and reporting how much is collected specific to Lust.
Follow up. Then I guess the question would be is, so you're keeping the money?
Yes.
Why? Why do you keep Lust money when it goes to another department, the DEQ folks? You know, for the underground, for what its purpose is, right? And then what do you do with it? I mean, what do you do with that money, I guess, is the next obvious question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, the legislation dictates how this is distributed. And I think it was the legislature's intent that YDOT keep the money for roads. But somebody has to be able to report to DEQ how much money was collected in Lust dollars so that DEQ can then receive their over the cap severance tax dollars. So this was a legislative action. As far as what we use it for is we use it, Lust dollars, since it is a highway user fee, we use it for the same thing we use all highway user fees for. So state funded projects on the roads, maintenance, match to federal dollars, those activities is what we use that money for.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Larson?
And Dennis, the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought also the reason, so the less money's collected, they do the swap like amounts. We're just rebranding the dollars. We're saying that money now was from FMRs and there's more flexibility in what you can use those dollars for than what you could use the less dollars for.
Mr. Chairman, I wish that were true because we would like to have, more flexibility, but it really is just a reporting issue on YDOT's behalf. We just report how much we receive in Lust to, state budget and LSO, and then they go do their thing with over the cap severance tax and provide that revenue directly to DEQ. So we collect the money, we retain the money, we report what the Lust amount is equal to, and then everything happens downstream of us from there.
Representative Nicholas?
Just to follow up on that, I know that over the course of the last few years, we have examined whether or not that percentage for Lust was right, and based upon how much money is actually needed for it. Is that something that you track at all?
Mr. Chairman, we do not. We do not track the need. All we do is just report the total. I do believe that the legislature fairly recently has allowed that money that DEQ receives to also mitigate landfills. I think that's been in the last 3 or 4 years. But that's from our perspective, Mr. Chairman, we're simply reporting a total, and that's the extent of our knowledge.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to slide 6. This is just the diesel portion of the receipts. Again, there are 2 components here that come off the top. The Lust related to diesel that we receive here as well. And then there is a fuel tax administration. We are allowed to take up to 2% of total collections for the administration of the fuel tax program to actually do the collection of gasoline and diesel fuel collections. We don't take the full 2% off the top. We just take what's necessary to run the fuel tax program. The rest of it goes into the distribution formula. And that distribution then goes 5% to the cities, 20% to the counties, and 75% to YDOT. Mr. Chairman, slide 7 just details in totals. Once you remove the Lust and you remove those state parks distributions, the pie chart represents that YDOT combining gas and diesel receives about 66.72% of the total gasoline and diesel revenue. Municipalities get approximately 9.79%, and the counties get approximately 23.49%.
Representative Nicholas?
So I don't know if it's, I can't recall if it's in here, but in terms of the amount of revenues from the gas and diesel tax, what's your projections on the increase of those over time?
Mr. Chairman, we were just running those numbers for the 26 budget bill, and I think they are relatively flat going into the future. Now, other states are seeing a decrease in those revenues, but Wyoming's been fairly consistent and we've seen a little increase, a tick up over time, but what we're forecasting right now is essentially flat.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe on slide 7.3, which we have provided you an updated version of, just to be in line with what the fuel tax working group is familiar with seeing. It shows
You should all have a handout, paper handout for this.
this just shows the updated regional amounts of fuel, gasoline and diesel for the surrounding states. It has been updated here on this slide as well, if you need to reference it. You can see that other states are all higher than WYDOT or Wyoming in terms of gasoline and diesel
So, Mr. Chairman,
fuel tax.
I have a question. So South Dakota lowered their gas tax? By
Mr.
2
Chairman.
cents?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we do see that from time to time. They lower it and increase it.
Well, that's because it's the variable based on the price of gas, right?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Mr. Chairman, moving on to slide 8. So we talked just a few slides ago about the revenues that WYDOT receives. This slide shows where the projected expenditures were for the fiscal year 25. So again, I just want to reinforce here a little bit that our expenditures, and our mission goes beyond just roads. And the expenditures here illustrate that quite well. Of course, the largest part of our budget does go to the Highway Improvement Program, which you see there on the right side of the screen. This is mainly what goes to contract. Some of this is internal design costs, but most of this goes to contract, that 57% or $470 million. Then the second largest source of our expenditure, our anticipated expenditure, is maintenance and operations. So that is snow removal, overlays, line painting, mowing, those things that are conducted and performed by our maintenance forces statewide. That accounts for about 15% or $125 million of the anticipated budget. And then just continuing clockwise, planning administration, that's a lot of the overhead for the organization. Capital expenditures, this is essentially our building expenditures and equipment here. Other expenditures, which, can you drill into that real quick just so we can look? So this would include some transfers to the University of Wyoming for the technology transfer, just our motorcycle safety program, some state and federal rural transit expenditures. And you can see that on slide 8.14 if you wanted the detail there as to what the other expenditures are under that category. Going back to the pie chart, we're up to operating transfers out, and this is what we pay other state agencies mainly for services that other state agencies provide to us. So this would be HRD, this would be the Attorney General's office. This is essentially the SWICAP, or at least a large portion of this is the SWICAP. And on slide 8.16 is the detail, if you folks wanted to dig into that. Moving up next is support services. This is largely, not entirely, but largely Mr. Rossetti's program. So it'd be driver services and some of those other programs that he oversees. Administration is the director and some of the functions that he oversees, some of the programs that he oversees. WyoLink there at almost $6 million a year. Aeronautics, which includes airport improvement and air service enhancement, and the CPA is included in here, or is it separate from this? This is only air service enhancement and AIP. And then law enforcement, which is ports of entry and of course the highway patrol. So this is where we anticipate the the expenditures of those revenues to go. Moving on to slide 9. This shows just back since 2005, so essentially a 20-year look back. This shows the total number of YDOT positions over time. You can see that we reached a high of 2,201 in total employee count, or at least positions. And then it has decreased from there. Most of those decreases have been due to legislative action. And the detail of what that legislative action was is on page 9.1 if you wanted to see the detail behind what happened there.
Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I think some of my brain fog cleared for just a moment, and if you would allow me to go back to the lust conversation. So back in the 80s, and this goes to the good senator's question, if my memory is correct, back in the 80s when they were trying to address leaking underground storage tanks, they was talking about how we generate revenue to pay for that. So they added a 1-cent fuel tax onto that to generate revenue, but you couldn't use the fuel tax for DEQ to do that. So they collect it and then they do a swap for FMRs so that they can then use it for leaking underground storage tanks. And then as that program has coming to an end, they're using it to take care of our solid waste issues. But does that sound right, Dennis?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it sounds plausible. That was a little bit before my time. So, and I trust that you know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm going to go with yes. That's how that works. Yes. Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to go to slide 9.4 for just a second here. And the director had already talked about this a little bit. Again, this references an approximation of how much of our total labor is actually paid for with federal dollars. And again, the three gentlemen sitting at this table, we can't charge the federal project. So our salaries are state funded. They have to be state funded. So anyone who does not directly work on a federal aid project, their salaries are paid for with state dollars. Those who do work on federal aid projects directly, we can get reimbursement from the feds on those salaries. And while I'm on the subject, just as a reminder to you folks, we receive all federal dollars as a reimbursement. So we're having to cash flow all of those expenditures with state dollars, and then we seek reimbursement. Moving on to slide 10, Mr. Chairman. Slide 10 represents, so if you go back to the beginning of the document, we anticipated receiving about $818 million in total for 2025. Of that $818 million that we received, $102 million of it, there on the far right of the graph, represents money that just passes through YDOT. So YDOT does not get direct benefit of those dollars. It passes through us directly to the locals. And it passes through to the locals in the three areas that are listed there on the left side, the three rows. That's through roads and highways, airports, and mass transit. So again, these are strictly of that $818 million. 100 million of it, a little more than 100 million of it, passes through YDOT to the locals. I think that's roughly 13% if I did my math correctly, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to the next slide, this is our unfunded operating needs, and I'm sure all of you folks have at least seen this. This document will be updated for 2026 so that when we send you out the new budget presentation, you will see the new numbers there. My initial understanding is, as you would expect, this number is going to go up. So it's going to be above and beyond the $411 million shortfall per year. you'll get the detail of that at the end of September, Mr. Chairman. Slide 12 just represents, this is specific to the highway improvement program. This is not budget-wide. This is just specific to surface transportation.
Mr. Chairman, can I go back to slide 10? I'm trying to remember why on what on the delivery to cities, towns, and counties, why it jumped from 21, 22, basically from 21 million to 52. To 52 one, and then 55, 52 for fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. That's
Mr. Chairman, my recollection, and Rodney will correct me if I'm wrong here, but through IDJA, there were some increased dollars specifically for locals. So I think through the, IDJA, there was some increased revenue. for the locals. IIJA, yes.
So that ends in 2 more years.
26, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So back on slide 12, Mr. Chairman, we were talking about the ratios just from the surrounding states of federal dollars versus state dollars that is applied to their surface transportation or highway improvement program. So I'll start with kind of the national average, which you can see at the bottom of the page there. The national average is 30% federal dollars and 70% state dollars. If you look at the regional average, it's 37% federal dollars that are used for highway functions in the regional states and 63% state funding. WIDOT is basically the reverse of that, meaning that the majority of our funding from roads comes from the feds. So what this really illustrates is how much more other states are able to use state dollars to fund highway improvement needs from their states. Now that percentage will change for fiscal year 27 when we receive the vehicle sales and use tax dollars. And what we anticipate based on those dollars in fiscal year 27 that WIDOT's going to be a 56% Fed and 44% state. So improving, but still not really in line with either the regional or the national averages there. Moving on to page 13, we talked about our buying power earlier in the presentation. That buying power was really across the organization as a whole. What this particular chart shows is specific to highway construction and construction costs. So on average, what it took you to $1 to do in 1994 now takes $4.07 to do today. So to Representative Nicholas's earlier comments, we have seen some extraordinary inflationary costs on the construction side. So even though on the federal side those dollars are going up, again, we're seeing a declining ability to maintain missions specific to the highways and surface transportation. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, is a graph that just really shows road deterioration versus time and really how quickly costs can escalate if you wait too long to do rehabilitation and reconstruction. So something that you would renovate there in the top part of the graph in the green would cost you $1. If you delay that, which we're really kind of in a situation to have to do just from limitations in budget, it's going to end up costing you $4 to $8 later. So there is a significant cost to delay. And Mr. Chairman, barring any questions, that is the end of this presentation.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate the great information. Committee, any questions about the budget presentation? Director, any further comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, just really appreciate the opportunity to continue our education opportunities with this committee as well as with the other parts of the bodies that are out there that I think education is key to making good sound decisions. And again, I want to really thank the working group for their efforts over the summer as well. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'll open the floor for any public comment. Anybody have any public comment on the department's presentation? Please feel free to come forward. Come on forward. Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, please.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman. My name's Thomas Mullen. I'm with I-80 Towing. And I've just got a couple quick comments on transportation since I've got everybody here. Oh,
Mr.
excuse me,
Mullen-
go ahead.
Mr. Mullen, this is just on YDOT budget.
Okay, it's
Okay, it's
same
not-
on the budget. They employ the people that are imposing all of this stuff. So if they're on a budget and it's funding and it's wasted, I would feel that should be part of the funding issue.
Okay,
All right.
continue.
Thank you for your consideration, Mr. Chairman. YDOT was given the authority to write rules and regulations and govern it, therefore they're paying for it. For the non-consensual tow list in Wyoming. I've just got 10 quick points to go over if you'd indulge me, I guess. One of them is why are companies just located on the I-80 corridor required to have 2 large wreckers which cost average $600,000 each? When the rest of the state is not required to have that, but yet they make us have them. Unless the lieutenant in charge of that area deems it not necessary for a specific tower not to have that, but everyone else has to in that corridor. And then why is law enforcement allowed to call any wrecker in the state that they prefer whenever they are not on the rotation list and have not been inspected through law enforcement to meet the standards of the tow policy that we have to abide by, but yet they can bypass it? And then why are law officers allowed to moonlight with towing companies when they're the ones that are calling out the tow company? I would figure there'd be some kind of conflict there. We were informed that YDOT, that all special requests that they do make, that they must inform dispatch of so they can keep a record of it. We put in for public records requests for such information. Took them about 4 months to get it back to us. Then they did not give us back what the information we requested. We asked them again and they say, oh, well, we'll look into it. And then here we are. Why are we not allowed to use our own inspected trucks? Because all our trucks, if we're operating in Wyoming, have to be inspected. So I have a location in Cheyenne and Laramie. If I have an incident in Cheyenne and I need assistance, they will not allow me to bring my equipment over from Laramie to assist my other company in Cheyenne. They say, well, no, you can pay somebody else here. Well, the majority of these incidents we get into, we might not even get paid for, but yet they want me to subcontract out and be liable to pay another company when I might not even get paid. And I'm like, why do we even inspect the trucks? YDOT constantly threatens us with removal from the rotation list because there are loopholes in the policy allow towers to be removed from the rotation list for any reason YDOT deems a violation. This could be whether occurred anytime our vehicle's on the roadway, whether we're responding to a law enforcement call or just a customer call. They say we can contest a suspension through the Dispute Resolution Committee. I have not yet heard of anyone that has disputed has ever had it overturned or put back on and say, oh yeah, you were right, because the same people that suspend you are the same people that you go back to and say, okay, I don't like that. And in several of their suspension letters, they put falsehoods or blatantly they lie. And you bring it up to them and say, well, that wasn't true. And they're like, oh, well, you're suspended. And now they're trying to regulate pricing with us. And that's an inadvertent way where they say, well, we can't tell you what to charge, but if we think it's exorbitant, we're going to kick you off the rotation list. And I've got two right here where they did that. They say, well, we were within our guidelines that you approved, but yet you're going to kick us off. Well, we thought it was too much. Well, what's the right amount? And they can't tell you because they say, well, it was too much, so we're going to kick you off the list. Thank you. Try again. If a tower has an issue with any part of this policy or its enforcement, they can expect, you call up and you leave a message. You might get a response back, you might not. Could take them a day, could take them weeks, could take them months. Then you can expect punitive actions to come back on you from YDOT or their representatives to do that. So I just feel I've had them follow me around, go to my shop, threaten my drivers with suspension. Well, we're going to suspend you if you keep doing this. If this would have been a patrol call, you couldn't have had your trucks over here from Laramie. So I'm like, I thought the main purpose was for safe and efficient removal from the side of the roadway, not for them to dictate how we're supposed to do our jobs. So once again, thank you for your time. There's a lot more. I've got a couple handouts I've got 6 of them. So if anyone would be interested in looking at them, because there's more than I can go over at this time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
Mr. Chairman.
testimony, Mr. Mullen. I'm not so sure that anything you shared with us had anything to do with the budget process. But that being said, committee, any questions? Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, my time in the legislature, towing service issues plague us. And it's always a challenge. We've had a number of pieces of legislation. So I think the question that I'd have, Mr. Chairman, is I would just ask Director if you could get me who it is in the agency that oversees these issues. If I could find out what the makeup of this resolution committee is, because I want to make sure that probably needs to have just some citizens on it rather than YDOT personnel. And Mr. Chairman, with permission, maybe we could work to try and get this resolved and do that. We don't need to, we've got a busy schedule here today, but I think, these guys provided an important service, and I think in making sure that it's fair. If they can't, if they feel like they're being wronged, we really are where they should be able to come to make sure that things are being done appropriately. And so I'd just like to try and verify that. So,
Mr. Mullen, have you also approached the commission, the Transportation Commission, with your issues?
Mr. Chairman, I've tried to send out emails, letters to everybody that I could think of. I've heard back from a couple of representatives, and I was trying to get to be put on the forum here, or however you want to call it, the agenda, but it was too late at that time. I've reached out to the Attorney General office, everybody, patrol, everybody, and they're all like, oh, well, oh, well, oh, well. So, my concern is they write in the policy to give themselves an out. And that's funded, through the state. So it's like, well, you're going to make us do something, but yet you can bypass all that. And what I'm afraid might happen later is when towers, say, pull themselves off the voluntary non-consensual tow list, it's going to happen out there where I get a call from a member of the public, say, Tom, come out here, work my accident for me, work my wreck. If it's the same, I'll still call dispatch, say, hey, I'm going out here because I'll be oversized over length to work this wreck. And then I'm going to send a driver out there. When they get on scene, there might be another tower that might pull up. Well, Highway Patrol called us, you have to get off. And it happened years ago. It's going to start fights on the highway, or law enforcement's going to start arresting my personnel for going out there, say, working for insurance companies when we get a call for a car stuck in a ditch. And that's my fear. We shouldn't have to worry about that aggravation. Just, follow the rules by how they well, years ago when this went up to the state on price regulation. And I remember up wherever it was, I was up there also trying to speak.
Yeah, Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So get my arms around this. So if I understand this, you have not gone in front of the Transportation Commission. Is that true, or have you been there? Have you explained this to them? And some of them are sitting right back there on the transportation, and they'll be meeting here tomorrow, right? So there's an opportunity for you to come there, but is to answer the question, have you gone in front of the Transportation Commission to talk about this issue? Thank you. And a follow-up.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I've tried to get in front of the Transportation Committee, but they said I could not get on there because it was too late, I believe, to put myself on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman. So
Well, I have a
Representative,
follow-up.
Co-Chairman Brown.
I can also just answer a little bit onto that. Mr. Mullen contacted me about 6 weeks ago with an email about this situation, about this topic. We had already drafted the agenda. We had already put our information forward. We were already pretty much set with what we were doing here. I worked with him behind the scenes, and he wanted to know if there was any way that he could come up and speak with this committee. I advised him that we would be able to get him in on public comment. We didn't have anything specifically related to this, but he'd allowed to come and have this discussion with public comment. The reason he contacted me is because he has tried to contact his commissioner, his personal representative commissioner on the commission numerous times with copies of the emails sent to me, in which he was not responding anything. Also copies of the emails to the governor's office where he was not receiving any information back. And so when I hear that type of information coming from any type of citizen in this state, I don't care where they're at, if they're not getting the value back from the executive branch, I feel like it was our duty and our obligation to hear that at the legislative branch, to at least hear this conversation. We have a very heavy lift today. We have a lot of information, but I do think that this is something that I've explained not only to the committee members, but also Mr. Mullen. It's plagued me the 9.5 years that I've been on the legislature. So that's a little bit. of the
Representative
backstory.
Nicholas.
Yeah, just
Oh, okay.
first off, these are complicated situations. I've heard about these things for years now, about these conflicts coming up. It doesn't do it justice to come in here and give one side of the conversation, right, of your point of view, because there's two sides to every conversation. So it really is kind of awkward. I suggest, though, that I don't know what goes on with the Transportation Commission, but the chairman's sitting right back there. So my 2 cents is go talk to him. And I think that's the first path forward here. Thank you for the chance to comment,
Mr. Chairman, Senator, if I may. Every time I've reached out before, they say, well, that's up to the legislation. So it just gets thrown right back at me. So thank you.
Representative Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've received your same letter about 6 weeks ago. And Darren, I sent it, I forwarded it to you and I said, consistent with what Senator Kolb just said, I think we'd like to see what your response is to it and what, and obviously that's one side. So I think we would like to know the other side and have either an email or a response to it, just so we understand what your position is and what the issues are. Because I agree with Representative Larson is that over the course of, we've had truckers come present to appropriations over the years for the same complaint. And typically they tend to work out over time, but they also raise their head every once in a while. And I just think it's our obligation to look at what the allegations are and just see what your response is. And so we're just better educated on both sides. So I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any other questions for Mr. Mullen? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mullen. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So is there any other public comment on the budget presentation? Okay, well, seeing none, I think we'll call for about a 10-minute break right now, and then we'll come back and discuss English language proficiency for CDL drivers. Okay, 10 minutes. Thank you. please come back to order. Committee, Mr. Byrne asked to make a few clarifying remarks, so Dennis, please have the floor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Dennis Byrne, Chief Financial Officer with YDOT. The question was asked specific to the capacity purchase agreement or the CPA and how that was funded. I just wanted to clarify, it is indeed $15 million of LSRA that was originally funding the project. We did also receive $8.8 million in ARPA funding and $4 million in CARES Act funding. So we have received an additional $12.8 million specific to the CPA. So I just wanted to clarify that. I think Representative Larson was spot on when he talked about the 8 million.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, Dennis. Okay, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, English language proficiency, CDL drivers. Talise, would you walk us through the memo?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting just a brief overview of the topic summary on the English language proficiency requirements for persons operating commercial motor vehicles. I'll just give a brief overview and then I'm happy to take more detailed questions if there are any. So the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration develops standards to test and license commercial motor vehicle drivers. One of these standards establishes minimum qualifications for persons who drive commercial motor vehicles. So one of those minimum qualifications is that a person must be able to read and speak the English language sufficiently to converse with the general public, to understand highway traffic signs and signals in the English language, to respond to official inquiries, and to make entries on reports and records. So these rules don't provide a penalty for violating the minimum qualification standards to drive a commercial motor vehicle. So it's just some history. In 2005, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance amended its North American Standard Out of Service criteria to include violations of the English language proficiency requirement. So from 2005 through 2015, violations of the English language proficiency requirement were included in the Alliance's North American Standard Out of Service criteria, and as a result, drivers who failed to communicate in the English language sufficiently were placed out of service. So then in 2015, the Alliance voted to remove violations of the English language proficiency requirement from the North American Standard Out of Service criteria. So as a result, in 2016, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration issued a policy memorandum that removed the requirement to place drivers out of service for English language proficiency violations. And they changed their standard for determining noncompliance with the English language proficiency requirement. The 2016 policy provided that if a driver can communicate sufficiently to complete the inspection or investigation, then the driver should not be cited for a violation of the English language proficiency requirement. In addition, if a driver cannot read, write, or speak English but can communicate sufficiently with the inspector or investigator, then the driver should not be cited for a violation of the English language proficiency requirement. Under the 2016 policy, violations of the English language proficiency requirement resulted in a citation, but did not result in the driver being placed out of service. So on April 28th, 2025, President Trump issued an executive order directing the United States Secretary of Transportation and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to rescind that 2016 policy memorandum not later than 60 days from the date of the executive order. The executive order also directed the secretary to ensure that the out-of-service criteria is revised, so a violation of the English language proficiency requirement results in the driver being placed out of service. So the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration issued a policy memorandum in 2025 that rescinded the 2016 policy memorandum and provided new guidance to enforcement personnel who perform inspections of commercial motor vehicles, and this policy memorandum was effective immediately. The 2025 policy memorandum outlines steps that personnel should take to enforce the English language proficiency requirement. The 2025 policy memorandum provides that if the inspector's initial contact with the driver indicates that the driver may not understand the inspector's initial instructions, then the inspector must conduct an English language proficiency assessment to evaluate the driver's compliance with the English language proficiency requirement. This assessment consists of two parts. The first part is a driver interview where the inspector evaluates the driver's ability to respond sufficiently to official inquiries and directions in English. The driver cannot use tools to facilitate communications such as interpreters, iSpeak cards, cue cards, smartphone applications, and on-call telephone interpretation services. So part 2 requires the inspector to evaluate the driver's ability to understand sufficiently highway traffic signs. Under the 2025 policy memorandum, if an inspector issues a citation for a violation of the English language proficiency requirement, then the inspector is required to be immediately place the driver out of service. So the policy, the topic summary that I drafted also includes that in 2025, 2 states, Arkansas and Oklahoma, enacted laws regarding English language proficiency for persons operating commercial motor vehicles, and 1 state, Tennessee, introduced legislation. The Arkansas law created an offense for operating a commercial motor vehicle without sufficient English language proficiency. And the Oklahoma law requires drivers of commercial motor vehicles to be able to demonstrate proficiency in the English language. And I will stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Talise. Great overview. Thank you. Committee, any questions about the memo? Okay, thank you. Could we have the department come forward, Director or Colonel Cameron? Whoever wants to address us. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Representatives, Senators. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate the memo prepared by LSO. So
Please introduce yourself.
yeah, I won't repeat any of the information that was just provided.
Please introduce
Oh,
yourself.
I'm sorry. Colonel Tim Cameron, I'm the Administrator of the Wyoming Highway Patrol.
Thank you.
Once we received word that the English language proficiency was going to be changed by the president, we started preparing to provide direction and a testing mechanism for our troopers. That was the testing mechanism. I think part of that you have as a handout was prepared and issued to all our troopers to support them in the field and being able to, it's not a new standard, but what was new is our ability to place the drivers out of service.
Are these laminated cards that we have up here? Does everyone have a copy of that? Okay.
Yes.
This is what we're using here in the state of Wyoming?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, so once the change was in effect, we had already, or we issued guidance to our troopers, specifically our inspectors, because only our inspectors can enforce this violation of English language proficiency today. So what I would like to do is just give you some background on since this change in being able to place the drivers out of service, what we've encountered, our enforcement numbers and so on. Most importantly, with me today is Lieutenant Kyle McKay, who's the Assistant Commander of our Commercial Motor Vehicle Division. Lieutenant McKay will provide some background, some data on enforcement activity and what we're actually seeing on our interstates and our roadways.
Thank you. Welcome, Lieutenant McKay.
Sorry, that's my first time with this mic. So, Mr. Chair, Senators and Representatives, thank you for having me today. This has been a hot topic nationwide amongst all states across the United States. I'm just basically here to give you a brief of what we've encountered. In 2024, we encountered 379 violations noted on an inspection. During that time, we were unable to place the driver out of service. In between January 1st and 2025, or June 25th, 2025, we've had 279 violations. Since the June 25th date, and this has been enacted as an out-of-service violation again, to August 17th, we've had 236 violations where we put drivers out of service for non-English speaking. Now, one thing I want to clarify on this is when all of us are sitting here today thinking about commercial vehicle is not just a semi-truck and tractor. This is also your hot shots, your pickup trucks, your gooseneck trailers, anything over 26,000 pounds that's traveling across our interstates. And we're seeing a lot of our box trucks too, that are under the 26,000 pound threshold, but still that aren't required to have a CDL, but are still a commercial vehicle based on the federal definition. So those are just kind of some of the numbers. I guess I open it up to you if you guys have any questions or any further comments.
I do have a question. This is just the number that your inspectors caught, right? And so obviously a patrolman pulling somebody over for a violation, a traffic violation, could not do that. Do you have any idea how many instances of, if they could take someone out of service, what would that number look like?
If I was a betting man, I think it would triple.
Triple? Wow. Okay, thank you. Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, thank you for, I guess we're doing something now. And more to the point though, is why can't other normal troopers deploy this testing requirement? What's the problem? Why can't we do that, or why don't we do that? And then also, second question would be, what are we doing about driver's licenses issued to people with non-legal status when we change the statute within the state of Wyoming? Have you had any citations for that? Is there an issue with trying to enforce that? And just, I guess, what are we doing with that law change, and have we done anything? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The first part of your question, the reason why are normal troopers, because you got to be federally certified to be able to enforce federal regulations. Now, the state of Wyoming has adopted under 31-18-303 the federal regulations, but as currently as we speak, they can't enforce federal regulations unless you're a certified inspector. So what that inspector looks like, they'd have to be at least a minimum of a level 3 or a level 1 inspector. A level 3 is what they would look at as driver's license registration, billing, shipping papers, logbooks. And then the level 1 inspector would be basically every mechanical thing on the vehicle itself.
It wouldn't preclude us from as Tennessee, preclude us from passing a state statute giving the authority to troopers, would it?
Mr. Chair, one of the interesting things about Tennessee and Oklahoma, reviewing both those bills, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Tennessee's bill died in their Senate, but both established a statutory violation of English language proficiency. So it's state statute. It would allow generally any peace officer to enforce that. The only component they couldn't complete would be that federal inspection, which would go to CVSA. Of the two bills, Arkansas and Oklahoma, Oklahoma has a little more teeth in it, in that not only does it establish it as a violation, but it also addresses something that we're already seeing, and that's where our inspectors place a driver out of service only to catch them soon thereafter driving again in violation of that out of service order. So if you were to look at Oklahoma's statute, it actually establishes a separate violation, which is punishable by fine and or imprisonment for driving after placed out of service. So of the two bills, both are good bills that establish it as a violation by statute, which again, any peace officer in Wyoming could enforce, but the Oklahoma has a little bit more teeth in their bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, do we know what Arizona and Texas have done with this, that they sometimes have a little problem with people coming across the border down there that don't speak a lot of English. Have they put any laws in effect?
Mr. Chair, Senator Anderson, I am not aware of that. I think that there are so many states right now looking at passing law on the single establishment of English language proficiency, or making a part of a larger bill, like I think Arkansas certainly did. They added it to an existing statute. I certainly would be glad to look into that.
Okay, Co-Chairman Brown.
Thank you. Lieutenant, just curious, troopers underneath you that are enforcing this kind of stuff, when you guys can do random inspections, you guys see them at the ports, you see them basically everywhere, you see all this happening on a day-to-day basis. Out of 10 drivers that you grab for a trooper on a daily basis, out of those 10, how many are non-proficient speaking?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to assume and throw in a statistic out there, but I can give you an example of one incident that's happened to me while I'm out there doing an inspection. All of our inspections are random, so they're not pointed to individual or company or anything like that. They come in through the port of entry, and the driver will go up to the window, and if they notice there may be a violation of logbook or question on registration or something like that, they'll start their inspection. One of the examples that I have that I would like to share with the group here is I had a driver that was placed out of service for non-English proficiency on the 13th of August. They flew into the country on the 9th on a visa, work visa. Their second driver flew in on the 10th on a work visa. Their third driver flew in on the 11th, all working for the same company, got placed out of service on the 13th coming through Cheyenne I-25 port of entry, switched drivers, went to Wichita, Kansas, came back. We caught them again. This time the second driver was driving on an ELP violation. And all of this happened in a short amount of time with no training with the company, policies, HR. I mean, when you get hired on a business today, HR is usually a week to 2 week long, which is the paperwork process. But that's kind of the examples of what we're seeing. You place them out of service and then they get back in their vehicle and they drive. And if they get caught down the road by another state or another inspector within Wyoming, we have the ability to look at that inspection and place that driver out of service on an out of service order or driving while out of service order. But those are the types of examples that we are seeing. This is something, just looking at the statistics in itself, in 2024, it really didn't have any teeth. The violation has always been there, but actually doing something about placing the driver out of service, it didn't have any teeth. And then when this was back reenacted out of 2025, you can see how much just in that short amount of time that violation is coming up.
Yeah, that's good. Senator Culp.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a fine associated with being placed out of service? I mean, is the fine enough? I don't know if there is one, but could you explain, I guess, what the consequences are for being placed out of service? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, Senator, the bond is set right now under federal regulation 391.11B2 at 270. But I mean, if we think about it, if a person is here on a work visa and they have a Mexico CDL or a Canadian CDL, there's really no teeth. I mean, we could force the driver to pay the bond on hand, and a lot of them just pull out cash and will pay the bond through the trooper. But there's really no teeth to be able to enforce the out of service or keep that driver from driving off.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Colonel.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I would add, we changed somewhat the way we do business, specifically in the realm of commercial vehicles. One of the things the patrol had gotten away from was the requirement of every trooper coming out of the academy being trained as a level 3 inspector. We went back to that. That's been a while ago that we made that internal decision, and that was part of our focus of re-energizing our commercial vehicle enforcement. So throughout the summer, we've done a number of what we call meat details, mobile enforcement and education teams that have worked primarily 80, but some other locations based on data that supports either through crash or complaints. And it's been very successful. And one of the things I look at closely are the numbers on crashes. The number of crashes in commercial vehicles has actually gone down in 2025. It's gone down subtly over several years, and of course, we'll have to see where we end up at the end of the year. But even with the decline in crashes, we've seen some notable commercial vehicle crashes, what I would term high-profile crashes, especially involving English language proficiency. And if I may, I don't think we answered Senator Kolb's question on House Bill 116, the non-resident driver's license. We sent out guidance to our troopers 2 times to make it clear how to approach to determine a driver's status, and then if they had probable cause to charge under that section. I can't tell you statistically because I didn't really think about preparing to answer that question, but Senator Kolb, I'm glad to get you that information. And I'm glad also to share with you the guidance that we sent to our troopers. And at the suggestion of the director, I sent the guidance provided to our troopers to WASCOP to share as they saw fit with the rest of the state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Committee, any further questions? Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You gave us an example earlier of these repetitive, offenses. Is there any recourse for the employer? Like, I'm sure they're being notified when they have these drivers come up and, that they can't be proficient. So, 1, 2, 3 times, is there anything that, the company itself can be held for once they, put an unsafe driver behind the wheel?
Mr. Chair and Representative, that's a good question. Yes, there is some recourse. Every time there's a violation, whether it's brakes, registration, insurance, EOP violation, it does affect their safety score. But the problem is these companies that are, we don't have enough drivers for the amount of commerce that we have. So there's a lot of companies out there, smaller companies that are taking risk and hiring drivers that aren't qualified to operate a commercial vehicle. And I think we've just seen that example in Florida. But what's happening there is their safety score goes up. So then the company will be, suspended or fined. And then what they'll do is they'll change their company name and start up a new company, and they'll employ the same drivers. And this cycle will be happening over and over again once their safety score reaches up. So the feds are right now in the process of trying to figure out how they can keep that from happening. Companies being leapfrogging is what they're calling it, and changing their company names.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you do these traffic stops and you do the reports on the DOT number or whatever, do you also is there a VIN number associated with their DOT number as well?
There is. Or, Mr. Chair, Representative, yes. On the inspection report, it lists the truck and trailer and the associated VINs with the truck and the trailer.
So Mr. Chairman, so if you go through and you're tracking this, even if they switch companies, you could still go back to the route and find that VIN number of the associated vehicle then, that's making the repeat offenses.
Mr. Chair, Representative, that is correct. But the thing is with these commercial vehicles, they put so many miles on their trucks yearly that they're constantly going through this cycle of vehicles. So I mean, we do track it through the inspections, but I don't know how the feds could track the overturn of vehicles that they're using.
Thank you.
Committee, any further questions?
Chairman Pappas, can I just
Oh,
add one
yes.
quick thing?
Yes.
I'm sure that the Colonel and Lieutenant.
Misty, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. It must be in the air today. Everybody's done it. Misty Zimmerman, Program Manager for Driver Services. As you all know, the driver's license standard here in Wyoming is a little bit higher than most states. We only allow for the knowledge test to be taken in English, and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration regulations only allows for that skills test to be administered in English. Someone must be able to communicate all the way through from start to finish. The one thing of note that I wanted to add, I don't think that Lieutenant McKay would dispute this, but I don't think any of these drivers that are non-English speaking are necessarily Wyoming CDL holders. There may be some out there. The thing of note is, as you look at legislation, as you talk about this process, when you have a CDL holder has a violation in the state of Wyoming, it's up to that state of record where they are currently licensed in to take action on that CDL holder or on his license. So although there may be an action that we can take in our state, that the state of record or where that person lives or in the driver's license is issued is responsible to take action for the driver. So there's a little bit of a requirement that we also keep that in mind as we're walking through that. And we look at the federal regulations that are also associated with it.
So Misty, can you tell me how we're reciprocal with other countries on CDLs, primarily Canada, I'm assuming, and Mexico, since there aren't any roads from anywhere else, but what is that reciprocal process, and can we not, I guess, if we find a violation of a foreign CDL, can we not simply just revoke it in the state of Wyoming?
Chairman Pappas, members of the committee. So we do work with the Foreign Conviction Withdrawal or network, and that's a tech annex thing. And it ensures that CDL holders for Mexico and Canada are held to our standards, right? So we can send those convictions through that process and those withdrawals. And when I say withdrawals, I mean a disqualification, which we've talked about. A typical out of service violation or out of service order does not get reported to the state of record. It is not something that goes to their driving record. A violation of an out of service order does, and that's federally mandated. So we would take that citation that would be issued by the inspector here and send that to the state of record. And that is a federal disqualification, as Talisa outlined in the memo here. It's only those federal standards that we can send through those chains of communication, whether that's through the Federal Conviction Withdrawal Database or through CIDLIS, the Commercial Driver's License Information System, to the other jurisdiction, but it is up to that state to take action on that driver. If we do something similar to, like we did with the blowover law several years ago, and relate it to what we called I'm going to use an acronym that I can't remember the name of, so I apologize, the ACD code. That can be transmitted to another jurisdiction like the reckless driving, and then they can take the similar action in their jurisdiction. It's not just action taken in Wyoming.
So we would have to have a statute, obviously, and a penalty on a second offense to do something like that, probably.
Chairman Pappas, it would be just a matter of determining how we could relate that to a federal standard. A state statute requires that the jurisdiction where the driver is licensed recognizes that, unless we go towards the non-resident operating privilege.
Okay. Just a second, I think you were next,
Yeah.
Co-Chairman.
Let me read.
Okay. Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, being, I always assume this, but just for reiteration, that you protect the highways of the state of Wyoming for the safe passage of folks within our state. And question I have is if we had a Wyoming state statute that was in fact about English proficiency, do you feel that that would make your job easier in protecting the highways and streets in the state of Wyoming? I guess, what's your opinion? I'd like to know what you think about something like that, in that it aids you or maybe doesn't aid you in doing what you're charged to do within the state of Wyoming. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, Senator Kolb, the short answer is yes. I think it would aid us. I think it would aid traffic safety, public safety on our interstates. You know, every day, commerce of America moves across our interstates, and far and away, the majority of those commercial vehicle drivers are true professionals. And I think that's why the majority of trucking associations, either locally or nationally, support the enforcement of ELP. But to answer your question, yes, I think it would aid us considerably.
Representative Wiley?
Thank you, Chairman Pappas. Well, what's stopping the state from just impounding these trucks? So, you know, we've had discussion over going after the driver and their licensing and stuff, but we've also heard testimony here about, you know, they're working around that. So if you get a repeat offense about that and you have these hits that continually happening, why can't we just start impounding the trucks?
Chairman, Representative. A lot of these, like I said, we don't want to try to limit commerce. Okay, so it's kind of at the discretion of the officer there and how he's doing his investigation. A lot of these loads are brokered. So let's say you have a load that you want to have taken from here to here, and it's, you know, it's a load that can expire. And you call a company, or you could use a broker agency to broker that load. Well, they broker out with these companies, and it could be any company, and that load picks it, or that's picked up. If we can keep that load to its destination, so we're not limiting commerce, hurting the shipper, then that's what we want to do. There are times that we do arrest the driver for second offenses, and they go into court, and that truck is towed and impounded, and then the company sends out a representative, or sometimes these companies are just so local that Denver, they'll send up a driver within the next day and they can continue on with that load. So we don't want to limit commerce because we don't want to hurt the shipper also at the same time. But it's also, we do have that ability to do that.
Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that, but I care more about people than I do about the load they're hauling. So the question I have is can you then interview said replacement driver that's going to pick up said truck of something before they travel down the highway? Can you interview them to make sure that they in fact can pass a proficiency test? Because what I'm hearing is that people you're having troubles with are constantly doing the same thing with different people. So then why wouldn't you be able to interview the new driver, or have some mechanism, or maybe you need a mechanism, I guess is what I'm asking, to interview the new person who's the replacement driver, just to make sure it's okay for the people of the state of Wyoming. Because once again, I don't care about the fruits and vegetables expiring. I care about people expiring. And I think that's the point here. And I know you care about that too, but do you need any tools to be able to do that? I guess is the question, to make that happen. Or do you think it's a good idea to interview people that are going to be taking over a driver's position once you've cited them for non-English compliance, or whatever the non-compliance is? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, Senator, there's a couple questions in there I would like to answer. The first one is the interview and the replacement. Well, if this driver is placed out, or this driver is placed out of service, and there's going to be someone coming up, a lot of times they'll come up when the port's closed, and we can't sit a trooper on a truck for a long time until that next driver takes it over. The way the regulation is written by the federal government as we speak, it's only a violation once they drive. So we can note it on the notation on the inspection that they got a co-driver that doesn't speak English or isn't proficient in it. But it's not a violation until they get into that truck and drive. So in a perfect world, yes, we would love to sit a trooper on a truck to make sure we have a safe driver behind it. But in reality, we can't just sit a trooper on a truck until the next person comes here. So, okay. The second question you had, could you remind me of the second question?
Well, any tools you need. But on the follow-up, I'll just say it now, is that my point is that about the replacement driver would be, they'd have to notify the Wyoming troopers that they are going to be manning said truck, right? That they were going to be have a driver to take it to its destination. But they would notify you that they're doing that. Yeah, I don't expect a trooper to be parked out there and camping out there waiting for somebody to show up. No, but it's basically out of service until they tell you, here's the new driver, an idea like that.
I think any, Mr. Chair, Senator, I think any legislation that can make drivers safer and our citizens safer in Wyoming is what we're all looking to lean towards. If you enact state statute, you got to understand that this doesn't just allow state troopers to enforce ELP violation. This also allows your county sheriff's departments that these trucks are avoiding the ports and going down the county roads. And it also allows your local police departments across the state to be able to enforce state statute as well.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Misty, this is probably more directed at you. And really what I'm trying to get to, I was hoping that maybe it would get answered with some of these other questions, but you mentioned that it's the state in which they're licensed that ultimately holds the trump card, if you will, of revoking that license or whatever the case is. What type of conversation and or technology is out there to let these other states know? And how often do these other states receive, hey, look, we just had this person come in here from Cheyenne. They went to Kansas, came back to Cheyenne. We caught them again. How often do we contact those other locations to tell them this? And I know they're not picking up the phone. I'm talking, is it reported in a system that they automatically get a notification? Are these states just not caring when this happens? What does this look like?
Chairman Pappas, Co-Chairman Brown. Currently, right now, the only reportable through AMVA, which is the AMVA Code Dictionary ACD, I finally remembered it, is actually the violation of the out-of-service order. The out-of-service order itself is not a reportable offense through CIDLIS, which is our reporting system. So that's sort of the problem that we have right now. I do know that there is conversations regarding the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration about how to address this English proficiency on a nationwide basis and creating a potential ACD code that would be reportable across jurisdictions where the drivers are licensed. But at this point, the only reportable code that we have is actually the violation of the out-of-service order that was originally imposed.
Committee, any further questions?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
if I could, thank you.
Colonel,
I'd just like to expand on Senator Cole's question.
please.
I would just point out in the Oklahoma statute, paragraph B3, the commercial motor carrier shall be notified of the location of any commercial vehicle involved in a violation, and upon payment of the fine in full and presentation of a driver who meets all requirements to operate a commercial motor vehicle within the state shall take possession of the vehicle. So that statute speaks specifically to your question.
Okay, thank you. Further questions, committee? Okay, well, thank you. At this time, I'll open this topic up for public comment. Any of you like to discuss this topic? Mr. Winnie, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I'm a FAA certificated flight instructor. In that capacity, I have to assess English language proficiency of students. Several decades ago, the International Civil Aviation Organization adopted English as the universal language for civil aviation. About a decade ago, the FAA brought in the assessment for non-native speakers. But I have to do that early in flight training because if they're going to be certified for as a student pilot for solo operations, they've obviously got to be able to communicate. Now, the complexity in aviation of communication, probably a little bit higher level than you see in the interstate trucking, but nevertheless, certain things like the recent incident down in Florida begs a question. How could a guy try to turn an 18-wheeler, a U-turn, in a manner that a car in the opposite direction couldn't stop? It just makes you wonder. I submit to you that your troopers, all of your troopers, can make an initial assessment right now. Maybe you want to give them a little bit of training, but I would submit your troopers, and probably most peace officers, can make an assessment. In my case, if I decide a student can't meet the requirements, my requirement is to refer it to the local flight standards district office, and they make the final determination. I submit to you, you could do something similar with your troopers and perhaps other peace officers. They can make an initial assessment, and if need be, refer it to a higher level qualified inspector. I've had a few things along Interstate 80 that made me wonder sometime whether the driver understood English or not. Never of the level of what happened down in Florida. At any rate, I think there's a solution here, and I think you're pinning in on it, and subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for Commander Winnie? Appreciate your testimony. Welcome.
Kevin Hawley, President, Wyoming Trucking Association. I'll be brief. We could talk about this probably all day, at least I could. One thing I do want to point out is just our appreciation for the great work of WYDOT and Highway Patrol. There are states out there that are ignoring this. I can tell you in Wyoming, we were taking it very seriously, and I wanted to make sure that credit was given where credit is due. Very appreciative. But to Kyle McKay's point, there is a big ball of yarn to untangle with this. It is not just one simple solution. We can dig deeper, deeper, and deeper. And one of the things you heard is something that we're working hard on. Again, this isn't our members of the Wyoming Trucking Association. These aren't the Wyoming guys that have had a DOT or an MC number. You talk to some of our guys, how long have you had that DOT? 54 years it's been in our family. We're really proud of our name, our brand, what we do, and the goods and services we provide. A lot of these guys could have 74 different DOT or MC numbers, and they're flipping it. So when we talk about that scorecard and you get a violation, you get stopped in Wyoming, scorecard goes up, they just shut it down, jump to another one. There's buying, there's training. It is a big mess, but again, appreciate the level of seriousness that our DOT and Highway Patrol are putting into this. Don't want to take up time. I know you have a busy schedule. Happy to answer any questions. Again, in appreciation, though, we just came from a 5-state safety meeting that was held. It was our turn in Wyoming to host it up in Cody, and we had members of both DOT and Highway Patrol. Colonel Cameron actually was there for the whole thing. When invited, I thought he'd blow in for 15 minutes, say hello, and go on. He stayed there the entire time, talking with our folks, answering questions. And what was great about that, from my perspective, is I got to talk to the troopers in Idaho, in Utah, in Colorado, and we're finding a lot of the same things and sharing war stories. So I just appreciate the opportunity, but we need to continue with this dialogue. And there are people nationally working on this as well, and I want to make sure that Wyoming is at the table for all of those conversations. Thank you again.
Okay. Representative Wiley.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Hawley. Are you familiar with the legislation in Oklahoma?
I'm more familiar with Arkansas, but happy to answer any questions. I certainly have my own perspective on things.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Oh, sure.
Mr. Nushila, appreciate you being here.
Never gonna live that.
Your discussion surrounding these other states, what did you hear coming from these other states on not necessarily the issue, but is there draft legislation? Are they looking at doing something like this? And I'm thinking more of like the Montana side of things where they're gonna have that one line that runs, straight through, and they have a lot, just like we do with the I-80 side of things. What are you seeing down there, or up there from Colorado and Montana specifically?
Most of my time, Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, members of the committee, most of my time actually spent a lot with the guys in Idaho. And maybe it's just because they were so forthcoming. I appreciate it because I don't know what the troopers see from their side of the door or the monitor. And it was fascinating to me learn. I think one of the questions earlier was about kind of going into computer systems and finding things. And one of the frustrations was, I'm not a detective to go through 17 levels of a shell company just to find out if this carrier has insurance. So what I'd like to propose is, after meeting these gentlemen, again, still new in my role, so don't know everyone, but in meeting them, I don't want to say a task force, but we need to keep the lines of communication open. And these folks probably know each other, but it'd be far more effective if we work together than checkerboarding. The trucking and transportation and logistics industry is already so checkerboard. When you go through one state and one county, there's rules and regulations here. I personally would like to see a more uniform effort in communication. So with that, I plan on reaching out to our folks and trying to make some connections. But again, just to point out, these aren't your Wyoming guys, your Wyoming carriers. I don't want to say my guys are doing it right. They're going to the safety meetings. They care. But again, how does this tie into everything? We heard from the tow company saying we've got some problems down there. 30% of their tows could go unpaid. Are some of these guys that don't have insurance? We talked about in our industry, insurance, getting squeezed, feeling the pressure, putting some of these small mom and pops out of business, not being able to keep up. It's all tied together. So thank you for the opportunity and look forward to continuing to work with you and other members.
Okay. Further questions, committee? Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any further testimony in the room here? Good morning.
Good morning. Dave Rose. I'm the president of the Wyoming Towing and Recovery Professionals. In our industry, Mr. Chairman, in our industry, we're running into this quite a bit. I mean, this is a real problem on breakdowns, accidents, where we have to have our dispatchers get a hold of their dispatchers to translate, on stuff like what's wrong with the truck, where's it going, who's paying the bill. I think that Lieutenant McKay's numbers are probably a little bit low on the amount of people that are running down the road that can't speak English. I talked with Sheila with the Trucking Association about this at least 5-10 years ago, about these guys not being able to read the road signs. This is a very real thing, especially with our overhead warnings and the signs that pop up. If they can't read that, we pick up a lot of trucks that are blowed over because they just they don't read the signs. They don't know what it means. Speed limits, road closed signs. We get a lot of people that are out there that they've driven their tractor trailer down some road that's been closed and it's drifted shut. They might be 3 or 4 miles down there before they ever think, well, I shouldn't have been on this thing. So just as a perspective from the towing industry, we run into it a lot, and it's a pretty real problem. We discussed this twice this year at our meetings, and we're in support of some legislation that puts a little bit of teeth into this. I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any Representative Geringer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Rose, for appearing here. You said the highway department or the HP's numbers were low. What would you put those numbers at?
Boy, I don't know. We get a lot of breakdown tows. I would say that we run into this 4 or 5 times a week. Out of 20 calls, probably 2 or 3. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for Mr. Rose?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Anderson?
Mr. Chairman, what language do they speak? Are we running Arabic or Spanish, or what is the dominant language?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. We've seen Russian, we've seen Arabic, we've seen Spanish. Some of them we can't even recognize. So I don't know, maybe it's a combination. It's not just one language, it's several.
Okay, it's all Greek to me. Yeah. Okay, anyhow, committee, further questions? Thank you, Mr.
Very
Rose.
good, thank you.
Appreciate it. Any more in-room testimony here? I do believe we do have someone online. So Eve, if you would let that person in.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It's Ms. Kathy Klein is online.
And let me try this. Could you try this? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Ms. Klein, we can hear you, but we don't see you, so.
Oh, here, let me try this. Well, let me do this without a visual. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Kathy Klein from Sheridan County. I've been 35 years in transportation, and we move a lot of Wyoming commodities. So I would like to make a point of saying our troopers, I very much support that. I just want to give you basically a bird's eye view of what it's like when we move across interstate. We do not do just intrastate, we do interstate pipe, lumber, and all of our commodities in Wyoming. We have been affected greatly by the language barrier and have witnessed and had multiple accidents involving our trucks with non-speaking citizens under H1N1 process of during the FMCSA. That's how they come in. The bird's eye view that I would like to say is that, yes, most of the independent truckers would like to see more of support where we are not endangered. You talk about your lives endangered with the public being in danger. Our lives are in great danger. We've witnessed multiple times that they're on cell phones in going across I-80, and I've seen it because I've been in the cab of the truck, and they're on interpreter services, trying to navigate during hazardous conditions. So this is not just basically changing something. I think there's an open dialogue, but just to give you a bird's eye view from the windshield side of what we deal with daily. Our insurance has increased across Wyoming highways greatly. In my renewal this year, they consider Wyoming now a hazardous state to cross. So being a Wyoming trucker, we are, as an independent trucking company, we are being hit so hard with insurance risk factors, and this is one of them. So that's all I would like to bring. And thank you very much, Chairman and Co-Chair.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Klein. Any questions for Ms. Klein? Thank you. I believe that's the only person we had online. Yes, thank you. So I'll close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure? Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize it's a little probably out of order, but because we talked about bill drafts and just how tight we are with time. I think there's things that have happened across the United States and certainly federally that have made this a topic now. So I would propose a bill draft that we would make English language proficiency requirements for the state of Wyoming And I would think starting off, model it after Oklahoma's law as a beginning point and make it match Wyoming's, the state of Wyoming's requirements. So that would be my proposal, is that we would work on a bill draft that would do that, Mr. Chairman, and that's my motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Representative Wiley. Okay, discussion, committee?
Sure.
Chairman Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support the motion. I want to be very thoughtful about this, and I think that it is a hot topic, and I don't disagree with any of the conversations that we've had today. What I don't want to do is do a knee-jerk reaction to something, have us hamstring or pigeonhole our troopers and or insurance carriers or anything like that we do on the backside. So I do hope that we're able to get a good round of people that may have interest in this topic at our next meeting as we consider this. It's going to be our last meeting. And so what I will say is I would encourage the committee that if you have ideas, thoughts, how this bill will come forward, once the co-chairman and I receive the initial draft, I would like to share that to the committee. And what I would like to have is get your amendments to us immediately, as soon as you can, ideas, thoughts, stuff like that. So we can start drafting that and getting that into the process before we come to our next meeting. I don't want to come into the next meeting with a bill that is, modeled after legislation, but we then try to maneuver it and do something that just doesn't work for Wyoming. And then we ultimately don't come up with anything. So it's my commitment to the committee that I'll get that to you as soon as we have that from staff. And that I would ask you guys to have a turnaround on that if you guys have thoughts and ideas on that as we move forward as quickly as possible.
So let me ask, because you'll probably only be getting comment from committee members. I would probably ask also our partners out there, towing people, trucking industry people. I would hope that bill draft would go out to everyone, be available to everyone, because I just don't want it to be legislative centric. I mean, we can certainly do as we did the fuel tax working group and put a small working group together. Yeah, I don't think I really want to go there because it really taxes our staff. But I do think input from more than just legislators is what is needed. Representative or Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think we had other policies that did something like this, but it would go to the committee first, maybe a few days for the committee to look at it, and then would go out and publish generally so we can get as many comments as we can about this topic so we can make the best bill draft possible.
Yeah, and my intent would be that it'd go out before the final packet go out.
Yes.
So that we can work issues from the public. Okay. All right, Representative or Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I did not hear in the testimony that there was a need for a state law, that the federal law they were executing was fine. The only thing I heard was we might not have to comply to the federal law with the training. So I guess I don't know what we're going to accomplish with a state law.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, one of many things is you allow sheriffs to enforce these rules when they find people, because they're going to bypass our highways to get around the troopers. And so it'll give it a very broad authority within the state of Wyoming to enforce this rule, this law, as a state statute instead of federal. I think, and the troopers testified, and they put words in their mouth, but they said it's going to help them. So I'm all for helping our troopers make our streets and highways safer. Plus, it's going to involve sheriff's departments. So I think it's much broader than just the federal side of the regulation. It actually puts the ability for us to put teeth into a regulation that we think fits Wyoming. And I think it's worth exploring, and that's why I made the motion.
Mr. Chairman, so I guess the only thing that sheriff could get certified to enforce those laws. I don't see that we're going to put any teeth into this at all. I'm a little confused about what you're gonna do with this, but let's look at it and see what it does.
You know, I certainly believe that we can put a lot more teeth in it. Just listening to what Oklahoma is doing, I think we really need to do something similar. So I guess I heard something different than you did, Senator Anderson. I really see a need for it. Okay, committee, any further questions? We have a motion on the floor to prepare a bill draft based on the Oklahoma model. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes. So I think that brings us to the end of the morning's agenda. So I think we will break for lunch early. We were going to break at noon and come back at 1:30. So since it's 11:30, we'll break and come back at 1. Okay? All right, so we'll be in recess till 1 o'clock.